We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, we are back again after a failed launch. Thank you, HBOW, for pointing out that my mic was not registering sound. It's weird because I check it a lot, and I probably just need to get a new mic, but I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm going to get back into it because I did an entire segment without any sound, and I was really upset about it. And then I went, you know what? I got no one to blame but myself for not checking the mic sound. So thank you again. We're back, and I hope you're doing good out there. We're going to barrel ahead into today's topics. But if you've been watching, if you've been looking around, there's a lot of protests going on at college campuses, and there's a lot of similarities between, you know, the Iraq era and the Vietnam era. And a lot of people don't see that lived through those eras. And it's kind of sad that people are not, you know, really making that connection that, you know, you're not in college, yes, but you were in the Vietnam era or the Iraq era. And I don't understand why you can't wrap your head around this, largely because of propaganda, but we're going to get into that. So rather than run my mouth, let's get started. So I thought this was a great tweet to kind of sum all this up from the Brunch Liberals account. At first they came for BLM and I did not speak out because I was not black. Then they came for defund the police and I did not speak out because we need police. Then they came for Stop Cop City and I did not speak out because I was a liberal. So let's take a look at what's going on right now on college campuses in the freedom-loving United States.
You are Hitler. You are a happy dog. Shame on you. May you never live another day.
I am a professor.
This is an every professor, everyone.
I am a professor of economics.
You are rabid dogs. You are.
So you see a lot of people on the right cheering this boot to the throat type mentality. And, you know, you'll see me on Twitter in the comments posting pictures of a guy licking a boot and just going, this is you. So this is where we're at with college protests right now. And just to kind of add some flame to this fire, here's another one. That was from, I believe, NYU. This is from University of Texas. Camera guy, just a guy.
Holy shit! Move back! 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 Move back!
This is the out of control police state that we live in. And I thought it was funny. I think it's in this one. You can see on the right here, state trooper. As soon as I saw this, I just thought of stormtroopers, you know, like stormtroopers from the Empire. These people are just, you know, they have nothing but contempt for people just kind of expressing their opinions. Like this guy was a cameraman who was just filming it. So what's the justification for that? And what you're going to get from a lot of people on the right are these people are pro-Hamas and they're anti-Semites, pro-Hamas protesters. And this is the exact same stuff that they did during, Vietnam. They were pro-communists. During Iraq, you were pro-Saddam, pro-terrorists. Now, if you have anything critical to say about what's going on in the Middle East, you're pro-Hamas. And so Glenn Greenwald has done a really good job kind of pointing out the flaws in this logic. And this is a tweet he put out. I've never seen an anti-Jewish program before that features everyone sitting in circles to celebrate and sing along with Jewish students as they lead the group in Jewish prayers. That major parts of these protests are composed of Jewish students is ignored for obvious reasons. Yes, Glenn, because they want to make them seem anti-Semitic. One of the accounts I follow that I get probably the most information from about these types of protests is Jewish Voice for Peace. And, I follow people like Do Dissidents and Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate, who are also Jewish. So, a lot of the best commentary on this are Jewish people. So, it's just the anti-Semitic thing, anti-Semitism thing loses a lot of its edge when you kind of just scratch the surface just a little bit, So there's another aspect of this that's a little bit disingenuous, and that is that there are paid interests trying to make these protesters look bad. And what I think is funny is the conservative folks who saw this dynamic at play with January 6th, for example, the Proud Boys guy was a Fed, Ray Epps, all that kind of stuff. They will never apply that same level of criticism to something like this because it's part of their cult membership. So, people like Lori Spencer, who's critical of the COVID narrative and a big RFK backer, she's out here like, oh, these are Soros, or, it's pro-Hamas protests on campus. And it's like, no, Lori, it's not that simple. And you're really showing your cult membership status when you come at the debate with that kind of thing. So this is a video of Max and Aaron from the Gray Zone kind of breaking down one of these fake protest kind of ops at a protest. And this is hilarious.
October. Never forget the 7th of October. One more time. Not 5 more times. Not 10 more times. Not 100 more times. Not 1,000 more times. Not 10,000 times.
All right, that was highly suspect to me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Listen, being Jewish myself, having been around a lot of Jews in my lifetime, that guy sounds Jewish.
He sounds like Jewish.
Never forget the 7th of October. Never forget the 7th of October. Yeah.
That sounds a little anti-Semitic, Aaron.
It's like, yeah, Palestinian talks like that. Give me a break.
Yeah, exactly. My Judar just went off when I heard,
Yeah.
and they're like, they've covered everything, including their eyes.
Yeah.
Look at that guy.
The 7th of October. Who talks like that?
Never forget the 7th of October. I can see.
It's just like the fake Nazis, the neo-Nazi guys who are completely masked, cover their faces. This is such a common tactic now. It gets used so frequently, you'd have to be a complete rube not to see through it.
What's that crazy Zionist wash up in Hollywood? John Lovitz. I could see him saying that.
The critic.
Let's say here. We'll watch
He's
it one more
totally
time.
covered. Come on.
This guy. It sounds like he's
Remember the 7th of October. Never forget the 7th of October. Never forget the 7th of October. Not 5 more times. Not 10 more times. Not 100 more times. Not 1,000 more times. Not 10,000 times.
Tell me you're from the 5 towns of Long Island without telling me you're from the 5 towns of Long Island.
I would bet everything I own that those are Jews. And also, never forget. That's also a Jewish line. That's what we say all the time. Never forget. Never forget.
Whenever there is any kind of protest like this, you have to assume that there are, provocateurs in the mix like this. And, these guys are obviously not very good at what they're doing, but hey.
So yes, 100%. I would bet anything that those are infiltrators and that that they're Jewish, and they probably had a really exciting night. It was probably really fun for them to dress up as Palestinian supporters, put on a keffiyeh. Probably like one of the biggest thrills of their lives to try to frame anti-genocide activists as being, pro-Hamas.
I mean, they were incentivized to do it, or they probably believed in it. So whether the Shirion Collective is a real thing or not, I believe this is definitely happening.
So what they're referring to there with the Shirion Collective is something that Waleed Shahid posted, and I just kind of screen grabbed it. But these people, the quote unquote Shirion Collective, and Max is saying, they can't verify if this is real or not. But he believes that this type of thing is going on, whether this is, some kind of false flag type thing or not. But anyway, this is what it says. Breaking Operation Global Insight. No more words. Join the Shirion Collective's first undercover operation. Become an agent embedded behind enemy lines at this weekend's protests. Making our first global operation that combines the efforts of volunteers and our more seasoned internal team. Who we're looking for? Individuals who can maintain a cool, calm, and connected demeanors under triggering Jew hate and pressure. Volunteers willing to wear keffiyehs and walk in these demonstrations masked. Individuals with Arabic-sounding names and Middle Eastern appearance may be uniquely positioned for deeper infiltration. Can you imagine being, an Arabic type person and responding to this ad? I couldn't even imagine the type of person that you would have to be to respond to an ad like this.
Why don't you go back to your home on Whore Island? Why don't you go back to your home on Whore Island?
So anyway, I just also want to remind you that, I'm jumping ahead of myself now. The other side so you hear a lot about anti-Semitism and violent anti-Semitism and, what I like to call cry bullying, because look at this. This is an example of what they would call assault.
Judge the person who responds. You should always judge the person who baby murderer. You should always judge. Whoa.
I didn't hear what she said, but she said baby murderer.
It's on camera. You ripped my flag. No. Stay here.
Can someone help me?
She attacked me.
I know. It's called. They poked the bear trying to get you. You can't. You're not allowed to.
This is so.
It's a victim society. I know. Guess what? That's how it is.
I mean, you saw that. That's just we just got assaulted and nobody's doing anything. So.
It's a victim society. We just got assaulted. You saw that brutal assault that just took place. That was just completely. I don't know how this guy survived it. How's he still standing after an assault like that? That was just. It's beyond my words, And so, just to kind of close this out, the liberal side of this, because this is supported on basically both sides of the Uniparty support this. The Biden administration is obviously funding it. They'll say certain things, but they're not actually doing anything to stop it. And I just want to remind you of, back in the day, what happened with BLM protests, because people forget about this. And this is People Over Property saying U.S. surveillance targets Black Lives Matter activists. The Obama administration's spy agencies have been tracking the movements and communications and activities of a new crop of Black activists. And, they did the same thing during January 6th. But the cult on the right will look at this and go, oh, January 6th was clearly an op, but October 7th, I believe everything they say about it. Well, why wouldn't you? It's totally, why would they lie at all about that? The media has such a great track record on everything else. I wouldn't understand why you would not jump into this. Why would you not? And so let's close this out with, here's Biden campaigning against Trump in 2020 and attacking him about the First Amendment.
I'm running for president. In addition to the Bible, the president might also want to open the U.S. Constitution once in a while. If he did, he'd find a thing called the First Amendment. And what it says in the beginning, it says, the right of the people peaceably to assemble.
Holy shit! Move back, move back, move back, move back, move back, move back, move back.
For redress of grievances. That's kind of an essential notion built into this country. Mr. President, that's America. No horses rising up on their hind legs to push back peaceful protest. Not using the American military to move against the American people. This is a nation of values.
Yeah, Trump.
Not a lot of Jews.
This is a nation of values. Values like this. Values like sicking stormtroopers on cameraman.
Move back, move back, move back, move back, move back.
So that's what we have today. We have a uniparty cult and cult members who can't seem to see the difference between their side and the other, or can't seem to see that there is no difference between their side and the other. And, depending on what cult you belong to is where you land on these issues. And, it's sad. And I don't know how this got in here, but whoops. Moving on. Our next segment is going to be about beloved Hollywood liberal and, cutting edge satirist, Bill Maher. Bill Maher recently did a rant about these protests, and boy, is it good. So we're going to break it down right now for you. As you can imagine, I have this clip, and it's called Bill Maher's Brunch Manifesto. But, let's just get it going.
And finally, new rule. Someone needs to tell the people who block traffic in the name of a cause, no one likes you. And you're probably hurting your cause.
Bill Maher in the Vietnam era. Someone needs to tell the people that are saying make love, not war, no one likes you.
In case you haven't seen what's going on lately, activists for ending the war in Gaza have taken to gathering on roads and bridges and stopping commuters from crossing. It happened last week in New York and San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle. They also blocked traffic here on the 405, but no one noticed.
Okay, that's funny. I'll give him credit. That's a good joke. One of his writers, I'm sure, wrote it.
What they did notice was this, that you have to be pretty dumb to think that the way to bring people around to your point of view is to make them late to pick up their kids from daycare. And that.
Okay, now, while this is a valid point, but who better to represent the interests of working parents than Bill Maher? This is a guy who's constantly talked about how he looks down on people who get married and have kids. He's definitely not a working class guy. He hates Trump people. He thinks they're stupid. So the idea that Bill Maher is the fierce advocate of working parents here is just starting off on the wrong foot. But second of all, a lot of these people, if they run into these protests, can interact with them directly and kind of get a better feel for what they're doing. I don't know how much of the protests are actually blocking streets. And I would argue that some of the people that are doing that might even be part of an op, because most of these protests are, sit-ins on college campuses. So they're only really blocking traffic on a college campus, and they're students who attend the college. So if they're going to be ejected from the college that they're paying for, that on its own is interesting. But then again, I had a tweet that I don't know if I included in this presentation, but this guy was saying how he's like, oh, it's interesting how suddenly all these people are against settlements because they're on college campuses. But let's keep going.
That's what most normies are thinking. I have a kid. I have a job. And yes, I'm sure there are injustices on both sides in the Middle East, as there are injustices all over the world. But I'm going to be late for work.
This is the part where Bill Maher kind of like tries to make himself seem like he actually gets it.
Something you protesters on the bridge seem to have the luxury of not having to worry about, which seems kind of privilegey.
Coming from a guy who has a TV show on HBO, kind of privilegey, guys.
You can
just that dynamic alone is hilarious. That Bill Maher is going to pan protesters for having privilege, the privilege not to work. Bill Maher, working class advocate of parents.
Glue your hands to the street because your hands don't have to do any work today.
Okay, that's an op. People that do that, I mean, okay, maybe not. Again, I feel like the people that like throw like deface paintings and stuff like that are probably paid for by some kind of friggin' CIA connected NGO to delegitimize real protests. And this is a theme.
I'm not saying there aren't sincere passions about Gaza, especially among people from the region, but social justice warriors, for a lot of them, it seems like it's more about the warrioring than about whatever the cause is. If you really cared.
Okay, I want to take a quick aside here to talk about the term social justice warriors. These civil rights protesters were social justice warriors. The civil rights movement, like women's rights, all those kind of gay rights, those started, the changes in the public perception on those issues, or really what kind of drove the legislation to a point where it had to be dealt with, were massive protests. Like, in the gay community was the Stonewall riots. In the black community, it was Selma and, all the MLK stuff and Malcolm X. And with women, it was Susan B. Anthony. There were large organic movements, Bill, before actual change happened. I don't know if you remember that or not, but a lot of these things started in the grassroots. Most of them wouldn't happen otherwise.
About apartheid so much, which Israel does not actually practice. Arabs there vote, they serve in parliament, they sit on the judiciary.
Okay, yeah. Yes, there are Arabs in Israel proper, but there's also Gaza, which is there's a wall between it, Bill. I've never been to Israel, so I can't vouch for this, but I've seen video for it and I've heard testimony of people who have been there. And also, there are respected international organizations who you would, quote on other issues that you back, that say flat out that Israel was an apartheid state. So you're wrong about that already.
Wouldn't you start with this? With the hundreds of millions of women in the world who live under a true apartheid, a gender apartheid of the most brutal kind? I'll wait.
That's funded by the United States. We go into these countries and fund the terror. And again, this is like, well, there's bad stuff in other parts of the world. This is the same guy that'll be like, well, Trump loves dictators and Putin's a dictator. We work with Saudi Arabia, Bill. Like, you could, and this is the thing about people like Bill Maher and Jimmy Kimmel and all these, frigging empty vessels, these puppets. They don't realize that we can see through them. Like Bill Maher gets a paycheck to talk like this. Joe Rogan does not. And the difference between a Bill Maher and a Joe Rogan is, if Joe Rogan gets something wrong, he has the humility to go, oh, I thought this, someone showed me new information and I realized I was wrong. Bill Maher does not have that level of humility. When he gets something wrong, he doubles down on it. And you can just see from the holes in his argument here and the way he's lining up straw men. He probably didn't write most of this to begin with, but it's disingenuous. You know, he has no credibility because his same opinion, you know, like right here, these kids need to be mad about dictators. He doesn't hold that same opinion. He's not intellectually consistent there. He's mad about Putin or whatever, but we work with Saudi Arabia. We work with countries that are dictatorships.
Are you really speaking truth to power, or do you just think you look cool in a keffiyeh? Which is really just the new Che Guevara t-shirt. Another historical figure you never researched and so think is a hero, but was actually a sadistic, racist monster fighting for communism, the worst form.
Okay. This is the part where I caught my attention, because Human Events is the source that Che was a racist, homophobe, and a mass murderer. And Human Events is a pro-military paper. And I pulled up the Wikipedia earlier, but let me pull it up again, since we're doing this again. So just to give you an idea, Human Events is an American conservative political news and analysis website founded in 1944. So it's respected. It's been around for a long time. And I'm not impugning the credibility of it. I'm just telling you that they have a very specific slant. Human Events became a digital-only publication in 2013. So let's just kind of really go into the weeds here about who Human Events is. Contributors to Human Events from the 1960s to 1980s included Spiro Agnew, James L. Buckley, Peter Gemma, Pat Buchanan, Ralph De Toledano, Russell Kirk, Phyllis Schlafly, Murray Rothbard, and Henry Hazlitt. During the presidency of Richard Nixon, Human Events became perhaps the most influential conservative journal in the Washington political community. Other regular writers included Robert Novak, Ann Coulter, Terrence P. Jeffrey, John Gizzi. Contributors have included Sean Hannity, Newt Gingrich, Paul Craig, Roberts, Cliff Kincaid, and Pat Sajak. I don't know about you, but I didn't hear any left-leaning names in there. So again, I'm not impugning the credibility of Human Events. I'm just saying that Bill Maher's claim that these youth kids are hypocrites because they wear Che. First of all, I haven't seen any of them wearing Che Guevara shirts. So this is already a straw man argument. But second of all, the way he backs it up is with a Human Events article, which is a far right pro-military. There's another line in here that I want to highlight. Human Events backed U.S. military intervention in the Vietnam War. After the war ended, the publication blamed American liberals for the collapse of South Vietnam. So again, you suck, Bill.
Form of government ever. But these are small matters.
Small matters. You're the source of your credibility here. Small matters.
Small matters when activism merges with narcissism. Less about the cause and more about me.
Bill Maher calling people narcissists is just fucking rich. Que rico, Bill, que rico.
Look at me. Watch me. And if you like the way I'm fighting injustice, remember to like and subscribe.
So this, I have to stop here because this right here is so beautifully Freudian. Bill Maher hates the fact that his era is over and people like Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore have bigger audiences than him. And so, this is kind of like one of those Bill Barbs, like, you're not serious because you're a social media guy or whatever. No, Bill, people see through you and your disingenuous bullshit. We know that there is an editing source behind what you're allowed to say and your edgy takes, and that you don't write most of them. Meanwhile, we can watch organic commentary from people like Max Blumenthal and Aaron Matei about these issues, so we don't have to listen to what some insulated dick pig thinks about these issues, who has frankly no clue. And listen, I don't dislike Bill Maher completely. I think he does have some good takes on some issues, but this is obviously not one of them.
In February, a sad, confused man even lit himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy, and in his last Facebook post, he said, "Many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery?"
I would do a talk show supporting it because I'm Bill Maher and I have no fucking clue what integrity means. This is a guy, a sad, confused man. He clearly knows nothing about Bushnell, who was going to have to, by orders in the military, he was a member of, an active duty member. Another thing Bill Maher has no idea about, service and commitment to his country. This guy had to make a choice. Do I want to go kill people on orders that I don't agree with, or do I want to make a statement about this? And he gave the ultimate sacrifice to make a statement, and Bill Maher calls him a sad, confused young man. But let's keep going because there's a greater point I want to make here.
Interesting cocktail question, sir, and I guess the right answer is kill myself. But it wouldn't have actually fixed the problem if General Ulysses S. Grant had immolated himself and his last words were, "Hey, Lincoln, are you using that log?"
Yeah, that's a totally valid analogy there. This kid who was an unknown airman is on the same level as Ulysses S. Grant. No, Bill, I know you don't understand it, but he did this to call attention to it, and the man had integrity. So I know you don't understand. I don't know who writes his straw men for him, but they're not doing a very good job.
And then last week, another sad, confused man set himself on fire at the Trump trial in New York.
And as soon as I saw this story, I knew this is exactly what it was for. Anything that you want to discredit, you just associate it with Trump. You just go, oh, well, if someone that's associated with Trump did it, then it's got to be dumb. And I don't know who this guy was. I'm pretty sure he lived, first of all. But second of all, it's just so suspect. And I guarantee you that Bill's not the only person making this connection. I guarantee you all the fucking people like Jimmy Kimmel and Seth Meyers and all the fucking cutouts and puppets in the mainstream press made this analogy as well, because that's what it's for, to discredit Mr. Bushnell, who made the ultimate sacrifice to call attention to something that has exploded into protests. You can say, oh, a sad, confused young man. Well, he made the ultimate sacrifice, and look what followed. Now people are waking up to what's going on. So fuck you, Bill Maher.
So you can tell yourself you're a martyr for the Palestinian cause, but it's a lot less special when the next guy does it for Stormy Daniels.
Canned laughter explodes. Again, that to me is the crystal clear reason that was a story. Oh, see, a guy who likes Trump did it too, so it's meaningless. Let me get back to my mimosa.
I don't want to diminish how sad it is that someone would take their own life for any reason, but maybe from now on, before anyone commits an act of civil disobedience, they should ask themselves a few questions, like, is the most important thing in my life something I hadn't heard of 6 months ago?
Yeah, Bill apparently doesn't know that this guy received orders that he was going to most likely be deployed to bomb people in the Middle East. It's not, he didn't just hear about this. And I'm sure he's trying to weave like someone like Aaron Bushnell together with the ignorant protesters you see on the news. They've, the ones they pick out probably from the Sherion Collective to sound misinformed and not know what they're talking about. Meanwhile, Glenn Greenwald had two of the kind of organizers for some of these protests on his show, and they're very intelligent and they're very clear about what their point is.
Yeah. Do I even know what the fuck I'm talking about?
No. And I got to give myself credit for where I cut in for this commentary, because no, you don't, Bill. You clearly have no idea what you're talking about.
Am I really here for the cause, or is the cause here to bring you me? Hey, if it makes you feel good to cosplay as revolutionaries, knock yourself out, burn yourself out. Just don't drag Gaza into it. Also, throwing stuff on paintings is just stupid.
Yes, same thing. throwing stuff on paintings and setting yourself on fire, exactly the same thing, of course. I mean, how could you not see that similarity?
No one sees men.
I have to believe that the people throwing shit on paintings are the Obama. Remember when Obama was running and the McCain campaign staffer like beat herself up and like tattooed a bee or like carved a bee in her forehead? I have to believe that the people throwing paint on paintings are those kind of people. Like they're literally hired by someone to make protesters look stupid. Just like the guys in matching khakis with the upside down flags are supposed to be Nazis are clearly some kind of a cutout budget from some kind of NGO that's tied to the security state. I would not doubt that maybe it's not the security state. Maybe it's oil companies that are trying to, diminish climate protests or whatever. Look, they're just throwing stuff on expensive paintings now. That's a very dumb way to protest climate change. Very dumb. And no one who's serious is going to do that. So I have to, the cynic in me, after reading all this stuff again about the Shirion Collective and the penchant for this kind of thing throughout history, whether or not this is legitimate stuff.
Mashed potatoes on a Monet and thinks he's got a point. I should recycle my cans. Last week, Google employees staged a sit-in to protest their company doing business with Israel. Their T-shirts said "Googlers against genocide," but they could have just as well said, "Look at me, see me." And Google did see them to the door.
Bill Maher doesn't see the parallel here between he was fired in the post-Iraq era. He was fired for just saying something that was uncomfortable. And now, he's become this guy. So he supports this type of, thing. And to be clear, good for Google, show your true face, fire those people, show who you really are. They'll get jobs somewhere else, and cheers to those people for having the integrity to do that. But let's keep rocking.
They fired all 28 of them the next day. Yes, Cajonte Award coming to you guys next year.
Yay! Yay! People got fired for expressing their political views. Woo! We love it! Ha-ha! Free speech and freedom, free thought. We love that.
But maybe the question that today's protester needs to ask themselves more than any other is, why do I care so much about this particular cause? North Korea starves its people. China puts them in concentration camps.
Okay. Are we funding North Korea killing their people, Bill? Are we funding China putting their kids in concentration camps? Does China invest heavily in our colleges? Do our colleges have sweetheart deals with China and North Korea? No, this is such a fucking dumb, half-witted analogy that I can't even believe that he goes on TV and reads this shit.
Myanmar brutalizes the Rohingya. Boko Haram kidnaps whole villages of women.
And we probably fund Boko Haram. I wouldn't doubt through some weird subversive thing like we do most of these terror groups.
The president of Burundi says gays should be stoned to death because they, quote, deserve it. Nothing? Ukraine?
Why aren't kids doing encampments for our proxy war with Russia in Ukraine that we started? Why aren't these kids camped out in support of the Azov battalion? I just don't get it.
Maybe if these Google employees had the slightest idea what kind of fundamentalist, oppressive assholes they're supporting, Hamas,
what's the weather like on your
Houthis,
planet?
Hezbollah, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, they might take it a little easier on the world's greatest monster, Genocide Joe. Genocide, by the way, is when you want to wipe out an entire people.
Yes, which is exactly what's going on, William.
That's the stated goal of Hamas. That's what from the river to the sea means. Hamas would do that to Israel, but can't.
And so we're going to fund them doing it. Again, Dave Smith made such a great point when he's debating Laura Loomer, and Bill Maher, I'm sure, didn't see that, but he kind of made the point that, look, the United States government, our elected government, has been brutally murdering people all over the world for the last 50 years, since World War II, basically. We've got wars in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Iraq again, Eastern Europe, all the shit we do in the South America. You name it. There's just a long list of us creating conflict everywhere we go. Are we as Americans guilty of that? Like, do we deserve to be targeted for that? Because you apply that standard to the Palestinians because they elected Hamas. Somehow they're worthy of being sacrificed in collateral damage. And it's just, again, it just shows how disingenuous and, basically lacking any intellectual credibility people like Bill Maher are, because he's clearly a cultist. He does not hold these same views when it comes to other issues, like the dictator thing. Like, oh, Putin is such a terrible dictator, we have to go attack him. But we work with Saudi Arabia, Bill. We work with Pakistan. We work with these evil dictators when it benefits us.
Israel could do that to them, but doesn't. And
Wow. I just, wildly out of touch with reality.
And you know how you could find that out? Google it. And not to rub it in, but you know who all this posturing for a cause reminds me of? This fat guy from Florida who's always pretending that he's all about the cause of making America great again, when plainly he's simply history's greatest attention whore.
There it is. The protesters are associated to Donald Trump. Just like I said about the guy setting himself on fire, if you want to delegitimize anything, associate it to Donald Trump. And I had this clip for later, but I just want to show you this now because just watch this.
Of the Palestinian people. They deserve a far better life. They deserve the chance to achieve their extraordinary potential. Palestinians have been trapped in a cycle of terrorism, poverty, and violence, exploited by those seeking to use them as pawns to advance terrorism and extremism. I was saddened by the fate of the...
Now, I just want to stop for a second here and say, I'm not making an argument that Trump is going to be any better than the fucking neocons in the Biden administration on Israel. He's made it pretty clear that he's just as bad. But I wanted to contrast Bill Maher's commentary about the protesters with this clip, because this is one of those instances where you just can't listen to anything the media says about Trump. You really have to get it from the horse's mouth. This is a video of him 4 years ago sticking it. And people forget that he had an adversarial relationship with Bibi Netanyahu. And especially when Biden won and Netanyahu clearly kind of sided with the Biden admin for obvious reasons. But just watch the rest of this little breakdown. It's pretty short.
Palestinian people. They deserve a far better life. They deserve the chance to achieve their extraordinary potential. Palestinians have been trapped in a cycle of terrorism, poverty, and violence, exploited by those seeking to use them as pawns to advance terrorism and extremism.
So I don't know. I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying that Trump is better, but you watch that and you kind of go, there's stuff that we forgot about. And I want to close this out by talking about, this is so great. Reddit had this thing with Mar talking about BLM. So let's listen to his commentary on a different protest. Actually, this is the
have
BLM.
to
This
demand that white
this is
people
BLM.
stop culturally appropriating how mad they are about racism. It's great that Caucasians have finally joined the fight for racial justice in unprecedented numbers.
So this is from during COVID, and he does make some decent points in this as well. But I just want you to overall notice the tone of his how he speaks about this protest versus the current ones.
Hating racism the most? You can't steal that. Elvis taking Little Richard's act, that was bad enough. Victor Sengby is an Oakland resident who put up small loops for footholds on trees in a local park for exercise and games. He says,
out of the dozens and hundreds and thousands of people that have walked by, no one, has thought that it looked anywhere close to a noose.
But Oakland's mayor, Libby Schaaf, wasn't going to let all that cheat her out of a chance to signal her virtue. She said these incidents will be investigated as a hate crime. Why is this white woman seeing racism where a black man isn't?
Bill Maher supports, I'm sure, having these protesters investigated for anti-Semitic hate crimes because that's the narrative now.
The mayor also said intentions don't matter, but they do matter. And white people need to stop trying to cancel other white people whose heart is in the right place, but don't get it exactly right on the first try. A few weeks
Yeah, but we need to cancel the protesters because they're idiots who don't know any better.
ago, when everyone was posting a black
The Palestinian people
square on Instagram,
They're
BuzzFeed
idiots.
wrote, influencers, it's a privilege to post a black square and then go back to your usual content. As opposed to what? Abandoning your life and just posting a black square every day? People got called out for not posting the square, then for just posting it without speaking out, and then for posting it and speaking out, but not voicing their support in the exact way that was said in the new Dakota ring. They were helping wrong. Ellen DeGeneres,
kind of like protesters at colleges right now are helping wrong.
felt enough pressure so that she erased a tweet that said,
Poor Ellen DeGeneres.
people of color in this country have faced injustice for far too long. Okay, that may not be exactly Black Lives Matter, but it's also very true and pretty close to what we're trying to get everyone to understand. Liberalism should be about lifting people up, and you don't do that by slapping down people who are trying to say, I'm on your side.
You don't help by slapping down people who are trying to say I'm on your, unless they're on the side of the opposition to Israel in the Middle East.
No wonder white people right now are acting like a nervous waiter on their first day. So scared of making a mistake, they put a fork in your iced tea and a straw in your salad. We don't want to chant the wrong chant.
The thing I like about these COVID era, talk shows with like Stephen Colbert and Bill Maher is there's no canned laugh track. So their jokes aren't funny. I mean, not that they're funny with the canned laugh track, but no one's laughing. So it's much more
hold the
appropriate.
wrong sign. Hey,
It's much more close to reality.
please, it's all we can do to clap on the right beat. You want to be a good ally, but not too good, or you're being a white savior. Use your voice, but don't make it about yourself. But speak up, unless it's your time to just listen. And then silence is violence. Even though sometimes silence just means someone works 2 jobs and has 3 kids. They have baby food on their shirt, not hate in their heart. Some guy just wrote into the New York Post,
So I'll give Bill Maher a little bit of credit because apparently he's been an advocate for working parents longer than I thought.
a senior level leader in an organization and feel compelled to speak up about racial injustice, but I'm afraid to. As a white man, I'm afraid that I will say something that will be misinterpreted, and I will do more harm than good for my career, too. Staying silent seems wrong, but safer. Am I alone in this? Unfortunately, no. There was a sports announcer in Sacramento who tweeted, "All lives matter," and immediately got fired, even though he apologized and said he just didn't understand. What he said came from a place of ignorance, not racism. That difference is important. Someone could have just.
So you get the idea. Bill Maher was much more friendly to the idea of protests a couple years ago when it was something his overlords didn't have to crack the whip on. But keeping with this theme of Bill Maher and his out of touch Hollywood takes, I want to show you, this is another clip from actually his podcast I thought was pretty interesting, where he's talking to John Fogerty of Creedence. And I mean, I gotta say, there are points in this that make me so angry because Bill Maher is basically talking to Fogerty like he's like, there's one point when John Fogerty says one of his opinions and Bill Maher picks up a guitar and goes, "Go play down on the corner," like condescendingly, like, "How dare you say something like that? Go play your song boy." And it's like, whoa, Bill Maher, like, you're a mediocre comedian at best. And I probably said this on the last one, but for you to say something like that to a legend like John Fogerty, I'm surprised he didn't get up and just slap Bill Maher. But watch this, because there are so many parallels to what's going on now. It's ridiculous, and it's relatively short.
On the wrong side.
Yeah. Well, there was a moment there when Pete came on and sang
They're talking
Big
about
Muddy,
Pete Seeger.
I'm pretty sure. And that was,
Well, they were, I mean, they were
people taking offense to, we was talking about the Vietnam War.
Criticizing the Vietnam War when that was still controversial. And of course, this is Sunday night.
It was controversial,
I believe,
controversial until we left. And that last helicopter got pushed off the aircraft carrier. I mean, that was,
how could
it never stopped being controversial.
In the sense, you mean that there are people today who think we absolutely should have fought the war, the Vietnam War. I mean, there are still people who think that. I am more sympathetic to the.
How did we get here? Boy, it didn't take long, did it?
Why? Why? What are you saying? It always comes back to Vietnam?
No, but
No.
there was an Iraq war. I'm sorry, I got to go here. There was a.
So this is why I clipped this. This is actually really interesting and just a sign of the times. And again, I like these parallels because we've been through this before.
War in Iraq, and I wrote a song called Deja Vu. And
yeah, I know it. I've heard it.
I was just, I was flown to New York. I was going to do it on Good Morning America. And suddenly, I mean, we're probably in the afternoon the day before, they're pushing back. So, you can't sing that song, right? I mean, Iraq, Vietnam.
I get it.
Yeah.
And
so
Sleepless Nights, that song? Is that about that?
No, it's a song I wrote. It's a song I recorded about 2004.
Okay. So go back to Iraq.
By the way, John Fogerty's like in his late 70s, I'm pretty sure. He looks pretty good.
No, so you're saying.
And I was about to be on, and the show was saying, he can't come on and sing that song.
Oh, wow.
And so, I'm not going to come on and sing something else. That was the whole.
Right.
So they brought him out to Good Morning America in New York, and then they read the lyrics, and they're like, "Nah, like, you can't play this. You got to play down on the corner." For Susie Q.
So finally, they thought about it for a few hours and decided that they didn't want to. Look, I can't read people's minds,
right?
But it just seemed like if you make such a big stink, you're actually making it worse than just doing it.
Of course,
right?
They always do that.
And so.
Yeah.
You get up very early in the morning to go do those morning shows. And Charlie Gibson, he was not happy that I was there because he was supporting, in the fine tradition of people who think they're supporting the flag and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're all Americans, right? Not just the ones who wave the flag all the time. Yeah. So. He was very unhappy, and he made it a point to he was really trying to embarrass me with questions and making it look like I was a lazy, rock and roll privileged, overpaid, musician. And he's probably right, but
yeah.
I like that he has a sense of humor about himself, but I also like this type of conversation because it's so insane to me how the Democrats have become the neocons. They are literally running the exact same playbook with Ukraine and now Israel that they ran during the Iraq and Afghanistan era.
Had a little pushback, and I think we came out even, but he was really unhappy that I was there. And, you know, since he owned the show, I mean, he was the dude, he got to say a few things that without the other side retorting. Right. At the end of the deal, though, we're all standing watching through that window or something, you know, he comes over and kind of, I don't know, I felt okay about it. He shook my hand, and I accept that. That's cool.
Yeah. And in retrospect, who was right and who was wrong? Ask yourself that question. Good question to ask. So I want to close this segment out by just showing you Bill Maher politically.
And because that's really what we're on to now is what's going to happen there. What do you see a year
So this is from Reddit, and this is them talking about the Iraq War 20 years
from now? What is Iraq going to look like in a year, in 2 years?
Well, maybe we can create a vital democracy like Kuwait or Panama or Vietnam, North Korea.
You're saying we don't have a good track record.
Actually, no, we don't.
Yeah,
Actually, no.
This is 20 years ago, and the people who were on Tim Robbins' side then now support the Ukraine war.
We do have a kind of a history of thinking we'll get to a place and we think we'll get there and go, you'll love us. You're going to love us. We're Americans. You're going to love it. You're just going to love it. But their ideas, I mean, certainly nobody living under Saddam Hussein. And by the way, I said in the show a few weeks ago that this has always been a 60-40 kind of a thing for me. These guys might be right. And as I say, now that we're doing it, I hope they are. And the 40 was that Saddam Hussein is such a huge pustule that it can't be all bad that we're getting rid of this guy.
See, this is always the logic, too. They're like, well, he's a dictator, so it's not too bad. At least we're doing the right thing. You know, we're getting the dictator.
But no one would say, I think, that anyone lived under freedom in Iraq while Saddam Hussein was in charge. But isn't it also true that people's ideas of freedom are very different? And that we think that our idea of freedom is going to be the idea that they have of freedom, and it's not that way?
Bill Maher speaking with nuance 20 years ago. I want to take a little aside because Jennifer here was talking about Tim Robbins. Yes, Susan Sarandon. I don't know. She did a speech recently at a Gaza protest that was amazing, and I covered it on one of my streams, but I'm sure that's how they came together because Tim Robbins is the man. Honestly, I saw him speak at a Bernie event a few years ago, and he's one of the few people that came out after COVID and apologized. He's one of the few liberals who was like, yo, I was wrong. Cheers to Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon, even though they're not, I don't know if they're together anymore. I don't think they are, but they're both like really based and politically smart. One more aside, Jacob's Ladder. I loved that movie and I tried to rewatch it. I actually have it on DVD. It's not as good as it was. It was so heavy duty back in the day, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should rewatch it again. But I watched it a couple years ago again, and I was like, this just doesn't hit like it used to, you know. Anyway, finish this out real quick.
Don't we have to give it a chance? I mean, we don't know. We have no idea what it's been like to know that if you know the demonstrations, they were saying this, just the Iraqis were saying this, the ones who were coming out saying, anytime there's a demonstration in the streets for Saddam, they come into places and they know if they don't go out, well, they're at risk. Their families are at risk. It's an astonishing level. By the way, I also want to say very quickly about...
See, I don't believe any of this shit now, but I just wanted to show you how nuanced their takes are on that, right?
And we put half of them in office.
Yes, that's...
40 years ago,
I don't know who this
tyrant. He's a thug who treats his people like this, which is absolutely true. We've known it for a long time.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of people in the world who treat their people like that.
And we put half of them in office.
Yes, that's...
There it is. I don't know who that woman is, but she's right. Anyway, a much more nuanced debate on these issues 20 years ago. And Bill Maher has some kind of an amnesia, clearly, because he doesn't remember this stuff. So let's move on to the TikTok ban, because this is some real interesting stuff. So this is from the Holding Biden Accountable account. Biden wants the kids to stop talking about Palestine so badly, he's planning to ban their favorite app one day before Trump probably returns to the White House. I hope this doesn't go through for a lot of reasons. TikTok is censorious in its own right, but I'm going to show you a couple little views that I don't think have gotten out much. But first of all, this guy right here has done a fantastic job explaining what
and
this
why
is
you
really
want to
about.
ban TikTok so bad, because we're becoming a nation of critical thinkers and we're starting to question everything. What's something
I will say this about TikTok too. Even though they can be very censorious, the one thing I love about it is you can download the videos out of it. So I have videos that have been pulled down by TikTok saved on my phone. And that's another reason it's dangerous, because you can download the videos and share them with people directly through WhatsApp or text or whatever. So they want this thing off the market for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to get into some reasons you may or may not know about in just a minute that I covered way back in an old stream, but I want to resurface these.
that we're questioning? Why we have a system in this country where Congress can bundle multiple issues, put them into one bill, and then vote yes or no on multiple issues. Why is a TikTok ban and foreign aid package to multiple countries in one bill? These should be individual bills that everyone votes on individually so that we know what you're voting for. And you.
The far right wingers in the Freedom Caucus, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, this is what they were fighting for. And a lot of Democrats are dumb enough to believe what the media is saying about them being far right extremists or whatever. But this is exactly what they were trying to accomplish. Get single item bills on the floor so that everyone has to be held accountable for their votes. And this guy may know that. I don't know. But that's what they were aiming for. And I support that 100%.
Listen to the people, but you don't want to do that. You want to package 19 things, and then you want to call it something like Save the Puppies, so that when your opposing party votes no to the Save the Puppy bill, you smear them on social media saying they hate puppies, when in fact they were voting no on 7 other things in the package, not the actual Save the Puppies bill. But if you had a Save the Puppies bill, a TikTok ban bill, foreign aid to Ukraine bill, we can see who's voting yes or no to every single thing. But yet you're using all these tactics, and we see right through it. We see through it.
This right here, it has nothing to do with China. The fact that average Joe right here can share this opinion and get it out to a massive audience with little to no effort, that is the problem. Way more than any anti-Semitism or China shit. Because I covered on my last stream that we have military equipment being produced in China right now. Right now. Chinese manufacturers are helping us arm our military. So the idea that China is some kind of a military threat to us is a fucking joke and a half. This right here is why TikTok has to go.
This is an incredibly flawed system, and it is impressive that you've got away with this shit for this long.
So I want to show you real quick too what the president of TikTok had to say, because I don't think all hope is lost yet, especially if Trump wins, because he's actually kind of come out on the side of not getting rid of it. But watch this.
It shows here, as you may have heard, Congress passed a bill that the president signed into law that is designed to ban TikTok in the United States. That will take TikTok away from you and 170 million Americans who find community and connection on our platform. Make no mistake, this is a ban on TikTok and a ban on you and your voice. Politicians may say otherwise, but don't get confused. Many who sponsored the bill admit a TikTok ban is the ultimate goal. It's obviously a disappointing moment, but it does not need to be a defining one. It's actually ironic because the freedom of expression on TikTok reflects the same American values that make the United States a beacon of freedom. TikTok gives everyday Americans a powerful way to be seen and heard. And that's why so many people have made TikTok part of their daily lives. Rest assured, We aren't going anywhere. We are confident and we will keep fighting for your rights in the courts. The facts and the Constitution are on our side, and we expect to prevail again. Our community is filled with people who have found acceptance and compassion, offered inspiration and encouragement.
How wild is it that it's a Chinese guy supporting the First Amendment in the United States right now? Like a communist supporting the First Amendment. So I'm not going to, you get the gist of what he's saying, but this is another reason. So part of the bill, if you've read much about it, the idea is they want to force a sale. So they're basically saying, hey, if you don't sell TikTok's platform off to some other company, you're out. And if you read the Twitter files, it's pretty clear that the security state has its hand in every social media app, even TikTok. I mean, they are not allowing a lot of critical content to propagate. I mean, I've been pulled down. I made a post on TikTok almost a year ago now where I just said, hey, do you support Ukraine? If you really support Ukraine, you would want the war to be over so less Ukrainians die. And they pulled that down. And I'm sure it's because of the NAFO guys or whatever flagged it. But the reason they want to force a sale of TikTok, watch this. This is Adam Curry, who used to be an MTV VJ on Joe Rogan, and now he's looking advertising.
Opinionated explanation for what is going on with TikTok.
Okay,
TikTok was eating Silicon Valley's lunch. They were taking all the ad money from Instagram, from Twitter, from Google. I'd say Google and Instagram and Facebook, just killing it, knocking it out of the fucking park.
So we need to force sale this app to one of these other Silicon Valley companies ASAP.
So look at who is saying, oh, it's China and they're tracking everything and it's a Communist Party. Dude, Facebook tracks you, Google tracks you, everyone fucking tracks you all over the place. But all of a sudden TikTok is a problem? No, it's because they're eating their lunch, and instead of competing, because they've tried, no one can seem to create the TikTok algorithm. And
if you've noticed this too, I've noticed this. Every fucking app is like TikTok now. YouTube Shorts, like TikTok. Instagram, like even Facebook. I log into Facebook now, and this is probably too much information, but like the algorithm adjusts to like what you engage with. And I tend to engage with, girls in bikinis, or like there's this Mexican woman who's like really pretty that cooks food. And I'll just like find myself going like, and now that's what comes up in my feed on Facebook. Facebook serves me up. They have the same, they're trying to emulate TikTok. But anyway, listen.
The thing that they have going there, it's what people want, the quick hits, the sing-alongs, etc. So they decided to lobby politicians and come up with this scam. So it's Hawley, it's Marco Rubio. Oh no, this is China. Fuck no, it's because
and they just slid it into a fucking Ukraine and Israel funding bill.
Silicon Valley couldn't compete with them. That's what's going on.
Interesting.
Oh yeah,
that's an interesting perspective.
Just look at. I know a lot about the advertising business because I ran companies that were in that. There was so much. Everyone was buying TikTok. No, and when you have a big company like Facebook or Google who are tied into government, how many times have they been to DC to explain what they're doing, and so that's all controlled. That's the only avenue they have to compete is to. You got to get these guys out of here, and luckily they're, even though it's American companies that run it, it's China. So now I'm not a China fan, but this is a fucking scam. They are just taking them down to get rid of the competition. It's very sad.
And they finally succeeded. They finally fucking succeeded. But all is not lost. And just to hammer this point home, I got one more clip here of Adam kind of going into the weeds a little bit more about what's going on here. So watch that. This is actually really good as well.
It's so weird.
It's all part of the distraction to keep us guessing, and whatever you do, keep posting selfies. We need you to keep posting selfies, keep letting us know what you're doing.
Track you.
That's back to TikTok. That's why Google is upset, because
which is what Twitter did. Oh no!
Oh no!
They almost got us. He said companies can demand reimbursement for the request, which is what Twitter did Though prior to 2019, as shown by the email screenshot, the company chose not to.
Yeah. Okay.
So they chose not to get reimbursement prior to 2019. So for a while, they were doing it for free. They were doing the government's
but it
work
becomes
for
expensive.
free.
Google has always charged them for it. I think Apple has charged them for it, and they publish those numbers. It just is not.
It's so weird.
It's all part of the distraction to keep us guessing, and whatever you do, keep posting selfies. We need you to keep posting selfies, keep letting us know what you're doing.
Track you.
That's back to TikTok. That's why Google is upset. Because
sorry, I forgot this clip's a little skewed. I think I started it over at one point.
Kids today, I'm just going to use kids because we're old fucks now, Joe.
Let's admit it. Air quotes like
this is another reason I want to get rid of
kids today. Kids today. Thank you. I feel good about my impression now. When they want to find a good restaurant in Austin, they don't go on Google and say good restaurant in Austin. They go to TikTok. What's a good restaurant in Austin? And then there's a video of, this isn't great. Look at this food. Blah, 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 blah.
Oh,
that's
really?
where they're going. So the search is falling apart. And that's Google's business is search. Everything is random for them. 120,000 people have been fired in Silicon Valley in the past 12 months.
So anyway, that one was a little bit out of context, but just to kind of hammer the point home, the reason TikTok is a problem is because it's competing heavily with Silicon Valley stalwarts like Facebook and Google. And stay woke, to use a term. So this next segment is another Joe Rogan clip, but Tucker Carlson was recently on Joe Rogan, and everyone's covered it. There have been 1,000 clips from it, from him talking about evolution, which I had to laugh at. He's like, "Well, evolution's not real." Yes, Tucker, evolution is real. It does not. The reality of evolution, I've had this debate with people for years because I grew up with my mom is a Bible belter, so she was always like, "No, evolution's not real, Dustin." I'm like, "Mom," she even bought me a book about creationism, and I literally went through and debunked it all. But my point is this: the reality of evolutionary science, because you can see it everywhere. Look at dogs. Dogs to me are one of the best examples of evolution. They came from wolves. Every breed of dog, from pugs to mastiffs to pit bulls to chihuahuas, came from wolves. Look at how that breed has kind of evolved based on really us intervening and domesticating them. But the point I'm making is that reality does not disprove religion at all. And I used to make this point to my mom about how, God, or whatever spiritual being you believe in, lives outside of time. Time and space is a construct of human beings. So 7 million years of evolution could be 7 days to God, and maybe that's how God created Earth. Whatever. I'm getting off track here. The point is, Tucker Carlson had a lot of conversation points with Joe Rogan, and one of the less covered ones, I haven't seen anyone touch on it, is when they talked about the Uhuru movement and Amalia Shatella, the 80-year-old veteran who they're attempting to jail for saying stuff that the government doesn't like. So, let's just watch this clip and we'll talk about it. It's kind of long, but there's a lot of good stuff with it. And he starts
that every day. And I may have.
He starts out by slamming Barry Weiss as a neocon. And I love it because Joe Rogan pushes back because he likes Barry Weiss, but Tucker stands his ground and he kind of lays out why she is a neocon. But then they get into this thing about the Uhuru movement. And this right here is why Tucker Carlson is hands down one of the best journalists out there right now. One of the most a truth teller.
I've just done it with Barry Weiss, so let me be a lot more specific about what I mean. If your agenda is neocon politics, which is her agenda, just say so. Don't pretend to be a defender of free speech as a principle, which is what she does.
How is she a defender of neocon politics?
Barry Weiss?
Yeah, what specifically?
Well, anyone, including me and Tulsi Gabbard, who thinks that America shouldn't be funding wars that don't help America, she will attack as a traitor to America or whatever it takes. And so, no.
They do this with Donald Trump to an extreme degree, and I covered it on my last stream about Dick Cheney calling Trump a threat to democracy. But
that's her main interest, which is fine. And by the way, I actually have friends who I disagree with really strongly on this question who believe in neocon politics. Doesn't mean they're terrible people or I hate them or I'm not friends. I'm still friends with them. But they're very direct about it. This is what I care about. Okay, fine. You know, I really care about bird hunting and fly fishing and or whatever. I can, you don't. That's totally cool. But be honest about it. So if your job is to defend the right of free people to say what they really believe, then go ahead and defend it. And if somebody is not allowed to speak or fired from his job for having an opinion that you disagree with, defend him anyway. I just interviewed a guy
like Bill Maher celebrating the Google employees getting fired. Bill Maher would definitely call himself an advocate of free speech. And it's just, I mean, I already panned him for it, but
who is a black nationalist socialist. Okay. So I'm obviously not much of a black nationalist. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I'm not. And I'm not.
So I just thought this was such a good thing to highlight because Tucker has a reputation of being a white supremacist, you know, like, oh, he's a racist white supremacist. And here he is, one of the only people with a massive platform highlighting the case of these black socialists. And, you know, like he said, he probably doesn't disagree with them on a lot of stuff, but
not a socialist either. But this guy is facing prison time under the Biden DA.
Okay, I have to take a quick aside because there's a comment here about the evolution thing. And I just, you know, you don't have to listen to me. An ape, we ain't apes fool. Okay, right. This is what I call my special little snowflake right here. Because this is the reason that people don't believe in evolution, because they want to believe that they're special. Like, I didn't come from an ape. I'm a special snowflake of a person who was made by God in a special little way. And I have a special little thing. No, you're just like the rest of us. You're just a fucking flesh coat on some kind of a life form. And again, like I said, the reality of evolution does not disprove the existence of God or any religion, really. It's all how you look at it. But evolution is a real thing. And if you study science at all, it's just undeniable, you know? So hate me if you need to. I don't hate you. I don't, you know, believe what you want to believe. But again, I don't think that those two views of like religious, you know, faith in God and Jesus and all that stuff conflict with evolution in any way. I don't think they do.
Jay, because he said things they don't like about foreign policy. And I just interviewed the guy for an hour and it was like, because on principle, you should be able to say what you think, period.
What is this gentleman's name?
He was actually it turns out.
Tucker is a free speech absolutist. He cares about this thing and he has integrity about it, which is so rare in today's world.
I loved him.
And again, I don't agree with everything the guy says, but I respect him as one of the best in the game right now for trying to speak truth to power, which is what a journalist should be doing.
Oh, and I'm embarrassed. I can't. He's a member of a pretty small black nationalist socialist group. It's like the Revolutionary Black Nationalists or something like that. They're out of Southwest Florida. And he's literally facing prison for repeating Russian disinformation. He's not even accused of doing anything. He's accused of saying things the Biden DOJ doesn't like. Well,
what were these things that he said?
Repeating Russian propaganda.
About?
So Russian propaganda, just going back to the thing about with Bill Maher and the guy setting himself on fire. Again, this is how they get you. Anything that is kind of counter to the establishment narrative, they can call it Russian propaganda, and then it's a fucking punishable offense. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing that they're doing with the Israel stuff. It's anti-Semitic. It's the same playbook every time.
About the invasion of Ukraine. And his point was, well, there's a backstory here, which is that NATO has been moving eastward since 1991. And that's a massive threat to Russia. Missiles on their border from a hostile power is a threat. And the Biden administration.
That is literally what the Cuban Missile Crisis was, when Russia put missiles in Cuba and we freaked out about it.
Accelerated that. And in response, Putin invaded eastern Ukraine. Now, you can disagree with that, but that's hardly a crackpot view, by the way. I think that's actually true. But even if you don't agree that it's true, that's not, you don't have to be a paid propagandist from the Kremlin to say that.
Right.
I have said it. I'm not a paid propagandist.
Is this a gentleman?
That's him right there.
4 Americans from a
Amalia
black empowerment organization work with Russian intelligence to spread propaganda, feds say.
To spread propaganda. Now, propaganda, first of all, you know, there's a lot of propaganda. But
Scroll up a little on that, Jamie, so I can read what this is saying. It's covered up. Oh, okay.
Right? So that guy is that guy right there.
Okay, subscribe real quick.
Yeah, the People's Democratic Uhuru Movement in St. Petersburg. So
he spoke with someone in Russia. They spoke with people in Russia, and then
he's not. No. He is being. He's charged with felonies. The FBI raided his house. The first thing they did was cover up the security cameras, and they went in there and arrested. They got raided by the FBI.
Okay.
Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service allegedly weaponized our First Amendment rights, freedoms Russia denies citizens, to divide America.
Weaponized our First Amendment rights. So Russia can, you know, that statement reminded me of this bit Jimmy Dore did a while back where they were laughing at all these headlines about different things that Russia supposedly weaponized. And it was ridiculous. It was like special needs people, sharks, dolphins, like Russia's weaponizing everything. Now they're weaponizing our First Amendment rights. So we got to crack down on that, you know.
Americans interfere elections in the U.S., says Assistant Attorney General Matthew Olson. Now, first of all, weaponized our First Amendment rights? No. Your First Amendment rights are never a crime.
Right.
They're God-given. The government did not bestow them. You were born with them as a free person, period. And the First Amendment simply says you can't interfere with their exercise. That's it.
I like that. As someone who's not religious myself, you know, I won't go into the weeds on what my beliefs are, but I'm not religious. But I like that framing because that is true. We're born with the right to say whatever we feel or whatever we want to say. It doesn't have to be right or correct or even proper or nice, but I like the way he framed that. The Constitution just enables that God-given right.
And in this, they are. And I looked at, I read this and I thought, and I reached out to this guy, by the way.
Matthew Olson?
No, I wish. Matthew Olson would never do my show. I mean, the guy whose salary I pay as a U.S. citizen? No, he would never speak to me.
Listen, look at that quote. Russia's Foreign Intelligence Services allegedly weaponized our First Amendment rights, freedoms Russia denies its own citizens, to divide Americans and interfere in elections in the United States. That, you gotta, like, why are you saying that?
Freedoms Russia denies its own citizens. That's interesting. Like, we got to deny our citizens that freedom too because Russia's weaponizing it.
Say what happened.
Well, but nothing happened. So that's the thing. So I'm reading this. Someone sent it to me and I'm like, okay, clearly there's a crime here. Like they were found with, I don't know, mortar shells, or they were, I mean, usually the government makes up, they put kitty porn on your computer at least to discredit you. There's no underlying crime.
Or they pepper infiltrators into your protest to discredit you.
Other than they said something that the foreign policy establishment of the United States disagrees with. Okay, that's not a crime by definition. And this guy is facing life in prison. And it looks to me, because Barry Weiss has not defended him, I think this guy is likely to spend the rest of his life in prison. And I'm like, this is crazy.
The rest of his life in prison?
Yes.
Okay.
Who else is talking about this, really? I've seen Jimmy Dore talk about it. I've seen Do Dissonance. I've seen indie media talk about this. Who with a platform the size of Tucker's is talking about this, though? Racist, white supremacist, white nationalist Tucker Carlson is the guy on Joe Rogan who is the only person with a bigger platform, arguably, than Tucker. One of the few people with a bigger platform than Tucker, Joe Rogan. He's talking about this on Joe Rogan, so millions and millions of more people are now seeing it. And props to Tucker Carlson. Just
hold it. This is the thing.
I think he's 83.
How do you say his name? Yeshitela and 3 other U.S. citizens, Penny Joanne Hess, Jesse Neville, and Augustus C. Romaine Jr. are charged.
I, of course, forgot to mention RBN when I was calling out all the people who have highlighted this because they've been obviously strong on it.
Conspiracy to defraud U.S. Hess. Defraud the United States. Hess, Yeshitela, and Neville are also charged with impersonating agents of a foreign government.
Okay, they say to defraud the United States. So defraud suggests theft of something of value, right?
Right.
If I defraud you, I steal your money. There's no allegation of that at all. And I actually read the charges. The only allegation is they said things that the U.S. government, the Biden administration doesn't like. That's it. And because they're unpopular and they have views that are considered, quote, fringe, you know, like crazy black nationalists, nobody wants to defend them. And my only point is not that I'm like such a principled person. This seems very obvious to me. You can't allow that. You absolutely cannot allow that if you believe in the First Amendment and the freedom of free people to say what they think.
It's wild to me because if you've seen the movie Idiocracy, I always thought that that would be the right wing that kind of led us to that space. And admittedly, it is the liberals that are the idiocracy of America, because you see it with something like this, where they allowed this. Remember the case with the kid who published the memes about Hillary Clinton that went to jail? Like, it's literally the liberals doing fucking fascism against free speech now. And, you know, I've touched on this a lot, but they have become the neocons, really. When people call the modern Democratic Party the left, I just have to laugh because there's nothing left about them at all, period. They are a right-wing party. And, you could argue that the Republicans are further right. I would argue that they're not now when you have, and we'll get into this in a minute, I have a fire clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene I'm going to play, but let's just finish this out.
So with this implication is they're saying that they were recruited by the FSB. So it says prosecutors said Ionov operated an entity called the Anti-Globalization Movement of Russia that was used to carry out its U.S. influence efforts overseen by the Russian intelligence service known as FSB. Okay, they recruited U.S.-based organizations to help sway elections, make it appear there was a strong support in the U.S. for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and backed efforts such as the 2015 United Nations petition to decry the genocide of African people in the U.S., according to the indictment.
So these kind of
such as a thing to decry genocide. The United Nations petition of 2015 to decry the genocide of African people in the U.S., according to the indictment.
Okay, so the real misinformation and propaganda is in the charging documents, actually. The real liars here are the Biden DOJ officials who did this, and they're dangerous. They're criminals, in my opinion. But if you read it carefully, you will see that the only crime is having opinions that the people in charge didn't like.
And were they in contact with people from Russia?
Yeah, I think they went over to Russia for some conference. So
they went over to Russia.
Like Jill Stein sat next to Putin at a conference or whatever, and now she's a Putin puppet.
But the way this typically works is they say, well, you went to a country against which we've imposed sanctions.
Right.
And you violated the sanctions regime in some way. Like, that's how they get you. They're not even alleging that. They're just saying you said things that we don't like, that, by the way, a foreign government we don't like agrees with.
And that's pretty much the crux of all of it. And again, cheers to Tucker Carlson for breaking the mold and actually, like I said, elevating this to Joe Rogan's platform. You know, he doesn't get enough credit for that because now a lot more people know about this thanks to him talking about it on Joe Rogan. So we're talking a lot about the cult nature of partisan politics these days and how we're trying to break free of that. It's taken me a long time to get out of it. I was guilty of it. I know a lot of people have been guilty of it, but I think that a lot of people are waking up to what a scam the partisan political system in the United States is. And I want to show you this video from a TikToker who it was shared on Twitter. And forgive me for not giving you credit. If you ping me, I will in the cut when I cut this out. But this is such a great breakdown of what's going on in American politics, and it's just again from an average guy on TikTok. But watch this. This is fantastic. And let's talk about it.
I hope you'll let me explain, because as we navigate the tricky intersectional ethics of the upcoming 2024 election and beyond, it's important that we begin to understand this in our bones. 50 years ago, the U.S. had two political parties, Republicans and Democrats, and both had genuine public support, and both platforms held some public appeal. And then the right wing realized that there was unimaginable money to be made from corporate campaign funding. So they abandoned their entire platform and dedicated themselves completely to allowing the exploitation of the environment and the working class to give every single penny to the ultra-rich.
That was the beginning of the Reagan era. I don't know if you know that. My mind has been blown on the Nixon thing. We'll get into that on a whole other level. Tucker talked about it on Joe Rogan, but Reagan was the beginning of the puppet era, really, I think. The true beginning.
Really well, but there was no way they were going to win elections with that as a platform because it amounted to a giant middle finger to the working class and their voter base, so they needed to mobilize a new voter base. They looked at a few options and settled on evangelical fundamentalist Christians who were previously pretty apolitical. In order to buy their votes, the Republican Party turned on a dime in the 1980s and became rabidly pro-life. Before this, the Republicans were openly pro-choice because abortion is a personal right, and they were the party advocating personal rights. This marked the start of the modern culture wars, where the right invents boogeymen to terrify their base into ignoring the fact that their entire platform is basically steal all your money and give it to the rich, while destroying the environment we live in. The Democrats quickly followed
They called that trickle-down economics. I don't know if you remember that, or Reaganomics.
suit, starting with Clinton. They also abandoned any actual representation of their base for corporate cash grabs, including massively lucrative arms deals and warmongering in order to funnel billions through the Pentagon into their corporate funders' pockets. So the only two major political parties in the most powerful country in the history of the world both completely sold out to corporate interests some 30 to 40 years ago, which has led to an ever-widening gap between public opinion and legislation. For example, polling shows that some 70% of Americans have wanted some form of universal health care for decades, but it's barred from even being seriously discussed.
So just so you know, too, this guy is on TikTok. His handle is @WatchfulCoyote. So I'll just keep this up while he does this incredible
Citizens
breakdown.
of the U.S. are shockingly aligned on most major issues. We all want the rich to pay taxes, not to watch our neighbors and families die from easily preventable medical issues, living wages, fair elections, breathable air, and not bombing of babies. Corporations want the exact opposite, or more accurately, they want the record-breaking profits they can extract from the opposite. This creates a real quandary for both Republicans and Democrats alike. How do you continue to get votes while aggressively working against everything your voters want? You already know the answer. They stage a farce where they pretend to be bitter enemies, and like any abuser, they both claim that they are the only ones who can keep you safe from the other. The Republicans pretend that they are the only thing preventing straight white Christians from being hunted for sport by hordes of black and brown trans drug dealers screaming pronouns and making up
There
new
it
genders.
is.
The Democrats pretend that they are the only ones who can save you from the coal-guzzling fascists literally storming the Capitol.
So this is the one thing I think he gets a little bit wrong, but I'll let it slide.
The fact that one boogeyman is totally fictional and the other is very real doesn't change.
Yeah, one is totally fictional and the other is... There are elements of truth to both of those boogeymen, but they are largely overplayed for the sake of dividing us. And it makes me a little sad that he buys the insurrectionist narrative, but whatever.
Change their tactical exploitation and the presentation of themselves as your only hope at all. And they've gotten really good at this dance. They do a great job at it now. They look genuinely enraged at each other as they denounce the other side of the aisle, while all of them vote unanimously for the same tax cuts for the rich and blow.
You know what, though? I will Watchful Coyote. If you happen to see this, my friend, his name is Jack, I guess. Look at my pinned tweet, because I think it'll change your mind on the boogeymen thing.
Military budgets and genocides that line their funders' pockets. The Republicans have it easy. Their platform of culture war has no relationship to their corporate funders, so when they get into office, they can do most of what they say they will. They'll criminalize abortion, defund social services, cut taxes, but only on the rich, never for you, institute a brutal police state, terrorize immigrants and LGBTQ people. The Democrats have a real problem, though. Their nominal platform is at odds with their corporate sponsors, so they do the only logical thing from that position. They intentionally lose.
Yes. This is the exact reason you constantly see the we don't know. We had complete control of all three branches of government in the Obama era, and we just couldn't pass good policy because the Republicans, those darn Republicans.
Every time they make a catch, win an election, they intentionally fumble the ball. We're all so used to seeing this farcical dance that we can't even really register it anymore, but the Democrats have had the Senate, House, and presidency simultaneously multiple times in the last few decades. At any one of those times, they could have actually made change. They could have codified Roe versus Wade. They could have passed legislation eliminating all student debt. They could have cut military spending, taxed the rich, passed universal health care. They could have capped emissions and maintained a livable environment. Our country and world could be very, very different than it is. It really doesn't have to be like this. But if they did those things, they would then gain massive public support and actually run the country, but they
really doesn't have to be like this. It really doesn't have to be like this.
Would lose all their corporate funding. So that's not actually what they want. So they keep this incredibly fragile balance, where since the Clinton years, where the Democrats sold out, the balance of power has been carefully maintained at almost exactly 50-50, giving both parties the ability to point the finger and blame the other for not getting anything done.
Nailing it.
It didn't used to be like that. The party that better represented the will of the population used to just win and then do what the people wanted. Like the 75th Congress, some 90 years ago, was 344 to 88. 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 Because the Democrats, who held the 344, maintained a 95% tax on the rich and actually subsidized social services and education. If today's Democrats simply adopted the platform of their own party from 90 years ago, they would win every election in a landslide. But they actively don't want to win. For many of us millennials, this was really driven home by the 2016 election cycle. Polls were crystal clear. In every single poll, Bernie Sanders beat Trump by double digits and Hillary Clinton lost to Trump.
We all saw this too. I know a lot of my peers in online are from the Bernie movement because I was a volunteer for Sanders, not because of anything other than I wanted healthcare for my fellow man. I've seen too many people become sick from it, but I love that this guy gets this because over the years we've kind of just slowly forgotten about all this.
The DNC pulled out all the stops. They lied, cheated, stole so much in order to force Sanders out and put Clinton up as the candidate that it was impossible not to see it. It looked insane to many of us. We felt crazy. I remember...
Yes. Okay, Willie, I wanted to highlight this comment, Willie, because I was just thinking about this and I was going to make this point when this guy's done, but I'm going to make it now. This is why there are massive college protests. Just vote. Get out and vote. It is so fucking clear that that does absolutely nothing. The only thing that actually changes the dynamic is real grassroots protest. We saw it with the civil rights movement. We saw it with women's rights. We've seen it with gay rights. Eventually, the mainstream comes around to the grassroots, just like with news. I talked about this the other day with indie news and indie music. Indie news is like indie music now because there's cool stuff popping on the underground, but you don't get it in the mainstream until like a year later. And news is like that now. And this right here is why, again, the protest movement is such a good thing to see being reignited, and cheers to the college kids. Anyway, let this guy finish.
Literally watching them kick Sanders delegates out for asking questions that they didn't want to answer at the Democratic National Convention in Maine. I remember watching them shut down polling places where Sanders had strong leads. All the things that the MAGA thinks happened in the 2020 election, the DNC literally did and didn't even bother to hide in 2016.
Yes. So I've talked about this before too. I got banned from Twitter for a week because I said something that they deemed hate speech against Chris Matthews because he was so upset that Bernie had won some primary, and I said something. It was a metaphor, but I'm not going to say it here because I don't want to get my stream shut off. But all of the stuff that they did in 2020, all of the stuff they did to Trump, they did to Bernie first. Russia likes him. He's a misogynist. All his followers are angry white guys. All the same stuff.
They were taken to court for it, and they didn't even deny that they rigged the primary. They just said, hey, we're a private company. We're under zero obligation to run fair elections. We can nominate whoever we want. The voting is just a farce. That was their legal argument, and they won with it. I remember hearing people scream at the DNC officials, do you want to lose? And slowly understanding that, yeah, that was exactly what they wanted. They would literally rather lose with Clinton than win with Sanders. Because
they were able to fundraise like mad with Trump. Every day it was a new scandal and a new crisis with Trump. My inbox was full of because Sanders sold his list to the DNC, and so I get texts now from Gavin Newsom and all kinds of scumbags.
When they lose, they can then say, gosh darn it, we tried, but they won this round. Please donate more. They get to look like the good guys who keep trying but just keep getting beaten down by the forces of fascism and racism and hate. As losers, they're noble victims, but when they win, they have real problems like what we're seeing now with Biden, where they have to try and hide the fact that they are also the forces of fascism and racism and hate. If Trump had won, he'd likely be doing the exact same thing, but it would be normal. We'd all expect it, and the DNC would fundraise like crazy. When a Democrat commits genocide, though, we're supposed to see it as atypical. Unflinchingly committing genocide is supposed to read as, oh, a little oopsie from an otherwise ethical humanitarian Democratic leader. The fact that the Republican platform doesn't interfere with their corporate interests and therefore they can enact the policies they promise to, while the Democrats have to constantly appear to fumble and fail in their oh-so-genuine efforts to create change has, of course, led to the rightward drift of U.S. politics over the last decades, to the point where Republican elected officials are now openly saying out loud that we should kill all Palestinians, while the House just voted near unanimously that anyone who says we should not commit genocide must be anti-Semitic. That shift is noteworthy. If any politician had stood up and publicly said that we should kill all of a given race 50 years ago, they would have rightfully been called a Nazi and lost all public credulity. Today, that's accepted on the floor of a state house, while opposing genocide is condemned and literally censured. That's pretty intense, and it's like that across the board. The only thing that
Bill Maher will make a video where he talks down to you for protesting that.
matters in political discourse is controlling the parameters of the narrative. What is outside the bounds on each side? If you control these two bookends, then the content of what is said in between them becomes wholly irrelevant. Both bookends have been steadily shifting to the right for a long time, to the point where
That's called an Overton window, for those of you who may not know. The more you know.
now right-wing politicians openly advocate ethnic cleansing, and left-wing politicians just quietly fund ethnic cleansing. And anything to the left of funding ethnic cleansing is literally censured. Remember how 100 years ago the Democrats controlled like 80% of Congress and they taxed the rich at 95% in a way that gave the U.S. the strongest economy in the history of the world? Now, if any elected official is crazy enough to suggest that the rich should pay any taxes at all, they're labeled as communists and laughed
They get APAC'd
out of the room. So I paid more taxes than Jeff Bezos last year. The cost of living is through the roof. Federal minimum wage is still $7.25, and we're watching our tax dollars bomb babies. But the Democrats, who are currently the ones bombing babies, are our saviors. And if we just vote for them a little bit more, then they'll save us all. Most notable in all of this is that if anyone speaks up,
vote harder,
who actually represents the will of the American people, they're mocked and driven out of the conversation. So people like Claudia de la Cruz or Cornel West are effectively barred from any presence in the main.
Well, to be fair here, I like Claudia de la Cruz, but Cornel West kind of played himself. But we won't go into that right now.
Media, or if they are covered, it's as an anomaly and immediately condemned as stealing votes from the real candidates. Notice that framing.
This is true. They're doing it to all of them.
It's not that Biden or Trump are losing through their complete failure to represent anything like what the people want. It's that anyone who represents what the people want is stealing votes from them. If you'd like to understand the mechanisms and expressions of this political narrative of control better, I can't recommend Chomsky enough. Since reading his masterwork, Manufacturing Consent, a propaganda model of the media, I have never seen the world the same way. That book is dense, but he covers the same content in a much more digestible fashion in the 1988 CBC Massey lectures titled Necessary Illusion.
But you get the idea. Check out Watchful Coyote on TikTok. This was a great piece that he did. And I just want to continue down this path a little bit by, he's kind of showing you the cult behavior and the fact that no matter what we do, we get the same results. And just the most recent example of that is going to be this right here.
This means is Medicare for all. We can do it now. It takes political courage. Start bringing the ruckus on the Democratic Party. That is our job.
And we go from that to this. Voting does nothing. These protests are kind of a last resort, really, for getting anything that the people actually want. And I just thought that your boy Watchful Coyote here broke it down so well. On the other side of the cult, we have these kinds of disagreements. Now, I want to show you this clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene because she sounds just amazing right here. And I love to hear this coming from a congressional person.
Anybody wants. We don't want an economy built on people's blood and dead bodies in foreign countries.
What? Let's hear that again.
This is not an economy anybody wants. We don't want an economy built on people's blood and dead bodies in foreign countries.
I may agree with a lot of what this woman says, but the fact that someone like that, a sitting congressperson, is saying that is absolutely fantastic. But let her finish.
We want an America first economy, and from now on, Steve, we are going to demand it from our Republican leaders. I don't care if the Speaker's office becomes a revolving door. If that's exactly what needs to happen, then let it be. But the days are over of the old Republican Party that wants to fund foreign wars and murder people in foreign lands while they stab the American people in their face and refuse to protect Americans and fix our problems over here.
There it is. Now, just to show you the diversity of opinions currently on the right, here's another person who I follow on Twitter just saying something absolutely batshit insane.
Move swiftly. And the first thing I want to say this morning is that the United States stands with Israel. And what we're witnessing today is we're seeing Joe Biden bend over backwards to pander to the Hamas wing of the Democrat Party.
So again, how stupid do you have to be? Like, Nancy Mace is not a stupid person. She actually has a pretty reasonable take on women's reproductive rights. I love the way that she called out Stephanopoulos when he tried to use her experience with sexual assault to demean her political views. But this is just Biden is pandering to Hamas. Like, how it's such a clearly stupid thing to say. And I just wanted to show you the vast difference of, intellect in the Republican Party right now. Someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene would be called a far right nutbag, while this lady is taken serious as a thought leader in the mainstream party for saying shit like this.
To war through weakness because of the White House. They are weak on all of these issues.
Why
and the global turmoil
why do you say that?
Well, I mean, look, just a few weeks ago on March 13th, Joe Biden and his administration allowed a waiver of sanctions to the tune of $10 billion in cold hard cash that would allow Iran to access that money in foreign banks, for example. We know that there was an effort last fall for over...
So that because they let Iran have some of their money back that we froze through sanctions, Joe Biden is pro-Hamas. Let's keep in mind, the real reason that they're doing that is because they want the war to keep going and the other side needs to have weapons. So the cynic in me sees it that way. But let's listen to the rest of this batshit stupid rant.
Over the $6 billion, separate issues, separate times. And we're watching Joe Biden just sort of distance himself from Israel. He's saying at the same time he supports Israel, he's doing things that then support Iran. You can't have it both ways.
Well, they just passed a huge amount of money to give to Israel, Nancy. So I don't think that your point really holds much water anymore. And that is pretty much the last big political segment I have today. I've already been on almost 2 hours. And I want to close out with, I like to close out with something that's a little bit humorous. I mean, this is definitely humorous, but that was not what I was intending to show. And I tried to show this on my last stream, but the audio was bad. So this is a conversation. I want to set this up by saying Danny Brown, first of all, is a rapper who I fucking love. I think he's genius. If you've never heard his record XXX or Old, both like classic rap albums. If you don't like rap, I feel bad for you. Like, you just haven't heard good rap. And Danny Brown is definitely good rap. But that aside, he has comedian Mark Norman on. And Mark Norman is a white guy who grew up in New Orleans. So he, grew up among black people. And they have this really kind of interesting conversation about the N-word here. So I just want to share this before we close out today.
Too much.
I wrote this one.
Okay. I've known my best friend since freshman year of high school. We're so close. We're basically like brothers. But where we lived, I was the token white kid at school. Ever since we became bros, he's been trying to get me to say the N-word for the past 5 years, and I always refuse because of the past stuff. I'm sure you know. Should I just go ahead and say it, or stay 10 toes down and not say it? Much love, Chris. No, don't fucking say it. It's horrible. I even find myself, I mean, that's just the way motherfuckers talk. Growing up in the hood and shit, but me as I get older, I'm trying my best not to say it as much.
Really?
Yeah. That's why I say brother a lot.
Same
So
here.
I try to switch it up, man. Like, it's just, I mean, I don't know. It's just not. I just realized there's no other race that uses a fucking slur to fucking show a fucking an endearment term.
That's true. You guys took it. We invented it.
Yeah.
But you guys really made it empowering. That was a good move.
So at this point, is it really empowering though? Like, because the way I look at it is like, just the word in general. If someone's like, yo, who want to hang out with my buddy? He's a real nigga. You know what I'm saying? What do you first think? You're like, oh, shit. We about to be some bullshit tonight. You get what I'm saying? It's not like a fucking positive term to use, So
I don't know, man. That's an epidemic. I went to public school in a predominantly black neighborhood, and it was a lot of like, come on, just say it. Just say it. It was tough.
I mean, it's in music everywhere. So I know a lot of these kids, they don't mean no harm.
No,
with saying it
was fun.
But, I just think it's just one of those words that you just got to just like, it's like any other slur to me. Like, none of them are good.
Sure.
So it's like a lot of shit come with that shit. I mean, if you're going to say it, just be prepared for what comes with it. You might get your ass whooped one day,
There you go.
But, I mean, if you're in your car by yourself singing along to some gangster rap. I can't be mad at you if you drop a couple N-bombs. I ain't around. You know, I don't care. You know. But that's just what it is, man, you know? But yeah, I just think, you know, I do find myself just, especially you hanging around like a bunch of white people and you just saying nigga all day. It's just cringy to me at this point, you know? So I'm just trying my best not to say it as much.
There you go. Hey, Richard Pryor had the same thing.
Yeah, it's weird. It's just fucking weird. Because then you find out you go to these, like that whole Richard Pryor thing. He's like, he go to other countries and shit, and black people don't talk like that to each other.
That's
like,
true.
Even in fucking Europe. Like, even if they say nigga, it's not
This is funny.
Nigga. What's up, my nigga?
Yeah.
Like, damn, dog. Calm down. It sounds very racist that way.
It does. It sounds more racist.
In a British accent, you like, hold up, man. Goddamn, man. Chill out. Chill out with the fucking nigga words, man.
I heard there's some friction between American black and African black. Is that
definitely
true?
is. They hate us.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's just like they don't look at us like we real Africans. Like they look at us like, you know, they're like, you ain't a real nigga.
Right.
Like we the real, we the official shit. You know what I'm saying?
You have a spear.
Y'all got Americanized and shit, you know?
Right, right.
But it's crazy. When I was in Africa, the best KFC I had in my life. I don't know why that.
The homeland.
I don't know why that was a thing, man.
Yeah. Well, I think America does that. Like Jews move here and they become like a Woody Allen. You go to Israel and Jews are like tough, you know, cool, hot guys.
Oh, really?
Well, we know Mark Norman isn't going to be at any college protests, at least. So I hurried and dug up this video. I wanted to add this to this conversation, but I went and dug up this video I posted on Instagram a while ago of Yellow Wolf actually talking about this same subject, and I thought it was so relevant. So listen to what he has to say. It's actually really good.
Hip hop and American music culture is black culture. Don't ever get fucked up. You know your roots, know the fuck you're getting this music from, and respect it. And don't embarrass white people and white rappers by doing that dumb shit. By dropping the N-bomb, you think you're all cool and shit. You're gonna find yourself slapped up, and it might be by a white boy, you know. Hip hop in America.
So there you go. I thought that was a relevant way to end that conversation because I always felt that way too. It's like it's one of those words that it's interesting to see Danny Brown saying he doesn't really fuck with it anymore because I've seen people like what's his name, Childish Gambino, Donald Glover say the same thing. He's like, I didn't grow up where, you know, saying the N-word was a thing and you know, so I always thought, and the way that they kind of approached it was funny as well. So anyway, if you stuck around today, thank you for doing so. And I hope that you picked up some interesting information at the very least. And, you know, like and subscribe, all that good shit. I don't say it enough, but I really just do this more than anything so I don't annoy the shit out of my relatives by going, oh, did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this? At least I have a kind of an outlet for this kind of shit. So thank you very much for tuning in and listening. I really, truly appreciate it. Get at me on Twitter at @RoGrimes, and hopefully I'll be back sooner than later. Take good care of yourself out there.